Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gladys Rora Berkowitz, and I'm the Director of Student Engagement Programs, and I also oversee the Chancellor's Research Fellowship. So I'm very happy to have you joining us today as we are inviting some of our alumni to talk about their experiences with the fellowship. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Chancellor's Research Fellowship, and I've been very fortunate to work with 8 of these 10 cohorts. So I am pleased to have some of our students come back and talk about their experiences as undergraduates, how the fellowship helped prepare them for their experiences afterwards. So I hope that you guys will find this really beneficial and will be inspired to apply. We're going through the application cycle right now. The application will open on March 1st, and the applications will be due on April 1st. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the Chancellor's Research Fellows. Right now, before we get started, I'd like to turn this over to Chancellor Wilcox.
Thanks, Gladys. I'll be brief. Welcome, everybody. I'm here with my wife, Diane Del Bono, and I have in front of me a picture of the class of 2014 Chancellor Research Fellows. Diane and I have had the privilege and pleasure of getting to know, I think, all the fellows. Maybe not, it might have been a class before we got here, but certainly all of them since then. We try to have lunch and maybe another event with the fellows. It's just always been a great group of students and a great way to engage with the university and with the research programs for all of you. So looking forward. Of course, all the alums are old buddies. Good to have you all back on campus and looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say. If you want to say anything, Diane?
You did a good job.
All right. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Chancellor Wilcox. Tanya and Darren will be our moderators today, so we're going to turn it over to them.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Shankar. I'm a third-year neuroscience major, and I'll be hosting this event with Darren, if Darren wants to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Darren. I'm a fourth-year physics and math major.
We are part of the Chancellor's Research Fellowship Leadership Committee. So I'm so glad to see you all here. Welcome to this Chancellor's Research Fellowship Alumni panel. We have some amazing guests with us here today who are past CRFs and are taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us and just talk to us about their journey at UCR and what they did after. So I would like to thank Chancellor Wilcox and his associate, Ms. Diane Del Bono, for being here and just making these connections so possible for us. So I'll have the panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Melanie. Melanie was a theater and English double major at UCR, and her CRF year was 2015 to 16. So if you just want to give a quick summary about what you're doing right now.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so right after I graduated class of 2017, I went straight to grad school for my master's in fine arts in theater directing. Graduated June 2020, so graduated virtually, but did a lot of virtual theater, and right now just getting back into, a lot of theaters coming back to in person. I'll be assistant directing one of my old professors from grad school out at the South Coast Rep, starting next week, which is really exciting, and just working with different playwrights and seeing what comes up. I freelance, so everything is, kind of moment to moment, but in an exciting way.
Thank you so much, Melanie. And next we have Connor Richards.
Hey everyone. So I was a CRF in 2014, 2015. And after leaving UCR, I went to do a master's in math and physics at Cambridge, and then started a PhD program in physics after that. But sort of while I was in my master's, realized maybe against my against my will that I was sort of more interested in pursuing problems out in the real world as opposed to staying in academia because of some developments with my field. And so I ended up leaving the PhD program and going into work in data science. So I'm a machine learning engineer today, and I work for a healthcare startup based in San Diego, which is where I'm from originally. So I think one of the valuable experiences that I got out of the CRF that I still use today is sort of exposure to and picking up, learning about new fields that I'm not necessarily trained in. I think that's a skill that has stuck with me, that I'm grateful to the CRF for giving me exposure to.
Thank you, Connor. Next, we have Julianne. She was an environmental engineering major at UCR, and her CRF year was 2015 to 16.
Everyone. So after I graduated in 2016, I went to Germany during my Fulbright, where I did research there for a year. And then after that, I started at Yale University, where I'm currently at getting my PhD, hoping to graduate by next spring. And the CRF, one thing I think is something really special about being a CRF is the friends you make. Like Melanie and I became much closer, even though we knew each other at honors, we came closer because of CRF. And I actually applied because of Connor and then another friend who did it before me. So it's a great experience and you make lifelong connections.
Thank you, Julianne. And our last panelist will be Catherine. She was a bioengineering major at UCR, and her CRF year was 2019 to 20.
Yeah, hi, it's great to meet you all. I graduated in the middle of the pandemic, and that was also my CRF year. So I was doing we were doing half of it in person, and then all of a sudden we were online. But after graduating, I was lucky enough to do the Cordova Fellowship in Public Affairs. And so I did an entirely virtual fellowship that was supposed to be based in NorCal online. And after that and through that fellowship, I got to work in a firm called IndieBio. We invest in pre-seed to seed stage startup companies. And so I'm working my dream job and learning a lot of things. And it's really exciting. And I think CRF was, and going through that application process was the start of building a habit and building confidence in myself to actually apply for things and try to shut that voice in the back of my head that was like, oh, I don't know if I can get it. So CRF was the first step where I actually started to go through things, and I met Gladys and a lot of people, Jennifer Kovetsky, a lot of resources on campus that really helped me grow and apply for things like Coral and Goldwater. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much once again for being here. You guys are all so amazing and accomplished, as Liliana said in the chat box. So we're really excited to hear from you guys today. So we'll jump right into questions. And for the audience, if you guys have any questions, feel free to just put it in the chat box and we'll get to it after. So our first question is, how did your experience as a CRF prepare you to pursue other opportunities?
I can go. I already touched on it a bit. So I mean, my formal training is in physics and math, and so working in in data science, I use those skills a decent amount. But I would say sort of very relatively surface level. It's not every day that I'm reaching back to things that I learned in quantum mechanics or any courses like that. But something that I do a lot and that I have done since I've left academia and gone to work in, I guess, industry, so to speak, is being exposed to and coming at different fields through the lens of data science and using the background that I have. And I think one of the, sort of the first place that I started doing that was honestly in the CRF when, we'd all get together and sit down and people would talk about the work they were doing. And the problem they were studying, and having those conversations, that dialogue, learning how to ask questions about someone's field who I know nothing about, but I want to engage this person and hear about the work that makes them light up and learn something for myself about the work that they're doing, know more about it than I did when I walked into the room. And so I think that that's something that still I use to this day. I've bounced around from like politics, public health, climate change, physical therapy. I've like sort of run around all kinds of different areas, things that I know nothing about or knew nothing about going in. And I think one of the skills that I still use that I developed during my time as a CRF is that ability to sit down with someone and learn about a field that I am learning about for the first time from that person. And I think I'm really grateful for the chance to build that skill.
So For me, it seems like the CRF was so long ago. I've had a lot of different experiences since then, but I think one of the experiences I take most is the application. I think even if you don't get it, you learn a lot about the writing process, especially for me, I'm a scientist engineer. So that process and being able to be detailed and but still short and to the point is really an important lesson that you'll learn and carry through the rest of your career. And so for that, I'm very thankful to the CRF.
I can go next. Pulling on that thread, I think two big takeaways that I had was one, learning how to communicate scientific information with a broader audience, which is incredibly important, especially when you're doing research, because you're doing research presumably to make an impactful change in the world. But if you can't communicate that change, then you can only go far with those discoveries that you're making. So in one aspect, learning how to communicate, and also CRF was the first competitive application I applied for as an undergrad, and I got rejected. And I went to Gladys and I was like, I want to keep trying, and like, what can I do better? And so pulling on what I was talking about earlier, it really taught me to be persistent and keep trying and be comfortable with failure, because through failure, you're going to learn. If I didn't apply for a CRF, I wouldn't have gotten other scholarships. I wouldn't have gotten Coro, and I wouldn't be working in venture capital. And working in an industry, people literally say it's easier to become a Major League Baseball player than to become a venture capitalist. And if I didn't have the resilience that was seeded in me through the CRF and through the community that's created through CRF, like, I wouldn't be where I am today. So yeah.
I think to what everyone is saying, I think the kind of the biggest experience for me was, I think, honestly, yeah, part of it was the application, knowing, how can I talk about what I want to do? How can I, I'm a director. I have to learn how to like really be able to communicate my ideas, my stories, why we need to do these things now. And that was huge in the CRF. I think that was probably the first time that I ever kind of put it down on paper for me to say like, hey, this is what I want to do. So that was huge, and I think really prepared me for my grad school applications and, my thesis writing in both undergrad and grad school, to have that communication sort of down. And yeah, I think being able to have that experience of working with different people in different disciplines, I think, there can kind of be a bubble that comes about in, certain, you kind of stick with your people, which makes sense. But I think CRF was a really great way. I found that I, found other people's research so amazing and exciting and enlightening. And, you really get to learn a lot just by hearing other people talk about what they're doing and what they're learning. So I think that was huge for me to get out of that sort of theater bubble that I was in. Yeah, that was huge.
Can I just tack something on? Oh, sorry, Darren.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I didn't think of this originally because when I applied for the CRF all those years ago, there wasn't an interview portion or anything like that. It was sort of, it was very new. And so, this wasn't true of my experience, but especially, something that Melanie said made me think of this, right? That as you think about how the CRF fits as a stepping stone in, your hopeful future academic journey, whether it is in academia or somewhere else, the structure of writing a proposal and then sitting down about your research, and then sitting down and talking to people who are going to ask you about it and about you and sort of your, what it is that you're passionate about, what it is that you want to do in the future, that looks a lot like grad school interviews for fellowships, like, Rhodes or Marshall, right? I mean, it looks a lot like this structure. I'm sure that's deliberate. I'm sure that this is deliberate in giving, people who are applying that sort of first crack at sitting down, expressing what it is that you want to do in writing, and then sitting down with people who are going to ask you in person to explain to them why you're passionate about this, what it is about it that's fascinating. So I think like that is an experience that wasn't there when I applied, the interview portion, but I think that's an invaluable experience as for people who are getting ready for something like, whether it's grad school, fellowships, or even just a job interview. I think that that's, you know, a great opportunity to build those skills.
All right, thank you guys. Going on to the next question. As you reflect on your experience as a Chancellor's Research Fellow, what skills did you gain that are still applicable to this day in your career?
I can go first.
go ahead,
Oh,
Kathy.
you can go. Are you sure?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is gonna sound, it might sound silly, but I had a fear of talking to professors and adults. And that transition between graduating undergrad and working a job in like the quote unquote real world was a little, it was softened by the CRF and through my fellowship. But one of the things I really valued was having the chance to talk to Chancellor Wilcox and a lot of deans and a lot of people that are more advanced in their careers, just to get my feet a little wet in networking was really helpful. And it's a lot about, like, when you do enter whatever field you go into after graduating, it is a lot about networking and who you know. And so just feeling comfortable talking to like adults, even though you're technically an adult when you're 21, was incredibly helpful, in addition to a lot of the things that I mentioned in the previous question.
I will piggyback. Definitely networking. It's an amazing skill you learn as a CRF. And I guess another skill that I picked up was just a lot of analytical and instrument work. I think having this experience gave me the time I needed to sit down and actually do research, because I had to work all through college. And so I didn't have enough money to just work in a lab for free. And so this opportunity gave me that chance to gain the skills that I needed to be successful in applying for universities like Yale and Stanford and Berkeley. Like, I still don't believe that I'm at Yale, but here I am every day, and it still kind of blows my mind. And I think the CRF gave me the confidence I needed. That's, even though it's maybe not considered a skill, I think it should be. Having confidence is a skill, and I think
I feel that. I was a whole hour off last week. Like,
thank you. And yeah, so the CRF gave me that opportunity to build my confidence and actually learn to persevere. Research isn't easy. You may develop this beautiful plan in your application, and it probably will not go the way you think. And so that's another skill that I've learned, and definitely am putting to the test during my PhD.
I definitely agree with Julianne in that, yeah, everything doesn't go exactly the way that you see it. I mean, there's a saying in theater, and I mean, probably every industry, of just like, it'll happen, something will happen before, usually it's during tech, but something will always happen, something will go wrong, and that's okay. You just kind of take it as it comes. And I think that was definitely a big lesson for me in terms of my project, and just knowing that I had to switch gears a little bit, and that was totally okay. And that was actually part of the process, you know, and being okay with that. I totally agree. And I agree also with confidence that I think it is a skill to be, you know, to know who you are, to continue developing yourself, but also saying, hey, this is where I'm at right now, you know, and I'm ready to do this. And, you know, being able to speak about your skills and your work and your talent in that way is huge. And there was another thing that I was going to say. Definitely one of the big skills that I gained, also to piggyback off of Catherine in terms of networking, because of the CRF, I was able to reach out to the playwright of the musical that we ended up, you know, doing, and that I directed and produced. And she flew out and was able to come out, and that was my first time meeting her. And it was just kind of, you know, like, will this happen? And it worked out. And, you know, and we still continue to talk to this day. And I just worked with her last year virtually. So yeah, I mean, you never know, you know, what connections that you'll make, you know, years before that can continue to become an opportunity down the line. So that was a great experience for me as well.
I think that everyone else said it wonderfully, and I don't know that I have anything to add. Yeah, I think there are a lot of skills to gain, and I'm grateful for the chance that the CRF provided.
Thank you all so much. So our next question is, during your undergraduate journey, what accomplishments are you most proud of and what have you learned from them?
Here you go. So Catherine mentioned that she applied for CRF and didn't get it the first time. So my biggest accomplishment was getting Goldwater. So I applied the same year as Connor, and Connor won, so great for him. But I only got honorable mention. I was very frustrated. And thankfully, Gladys convinced me to reach out to the Goldwater Foundation and ask them, how can I strengthen my application? And through that process, it really taught me how important it is to put yourself out there and take risks as a student, especially because you are a student and you aren't an employee. You have the opportunity to fail and not have serious consequences. And I think by doing that with the Goldwater, it really pushed me to apply for Fulbright. And I remember I couldn't look at the email when I got it because Gladys, I was sitting in the office when I worked with Gladys for a year, and Gladys was like, I think this is the email. And I was like, I can't open it. And so Gladys and I were jumping up and down because we worked so hard on my application. And so from Goldwater to Fulbright and NSF after that, I feel so blessed to have the support I did as CRF. Gladys is probably the best person on UCR's campus. I hope the chancellor's off now. Gladys is amazing, and she can really help change your life.
I'm still here.
Hi, Chancellor.
I'm still here.
Yeah, Gladys is amazing.
Yes, she is.
We agree.
And yeah,
We were just saying that too.
Yeah, Gladys can change your life. She changed mine, and even if you don't win CRF, you'll gain a great mentor at Gladys. And so I guess my friendship with Gladys is another great accomplishment I have.
You're making me tear up. Thank you.
All right. Sorry.
I can go. I was waiting to see if someone else wanted to. Yeah, I think that I would say probably point to the same award as Julianne and say, for me, I think Goldwater was something that, now I can't remember. I think it was Catherine said this already about how, she said that winning the CRF was the first, was sort of her first award, and that started the snowball, right? I think in many ways for me, I saw how much, that one award, finding one person or one group of people to say, we think this person is successful. And then that just kind of gets the ball rolling and it snowballs, right? And so I think that in many ways, that was something that I learned and that I really see looking back. And I have to like Julianne, acknowledge the central integral role that Gladys played in everything that I did during undergrad. It's not fair to talk about any accomplishments that I had without acknowledging the sometimes small, sometimes central, massive role that Gladys played in all of them. So again, Gladys is amazing. Gladys is great. I am, can't thank her enough. But yeah, I think that, that, and also, and I think Julianne also touched on this, but one of the other things is the comfort that, and acceptance of failure, right? I mean, like I had, Julianne talked about initially applying for the Goldwater and going back and saying, okay, what could I do differently? I had an experience with applying for the Marshall where, I went in and I did the interview and I thought it went well. And you sort of have to know with these things that the the odds that you get any given award, you know, when you're going for things, it's low, right? And so understanding that like it's okay to fail, it's okay. And I still remember, I don't know when the last time I was on UCR's campus was, but I can tell you that I was walking from the physics building past BCOE up by like geology towards the library on campus, or the bookstore, sorry, the bookstore on campus, when I got the email telling me I didn't get Marshall. And I was like, oh, dang, okay, well, on to the next one, right? And so like that mentality and like, you know, people already talked about confidence and things like that. Just the, you know, the sort of belief in yourself and being able to know that failure is going to come, but that's okay because it doesn't define you, right? I think that's you know, something that's really important. Yeah, at this point I'm rambling, so I'm going to stop. Gladys is great. Apply for awards. When you get one, it'll help you get others.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. Thanks for those. How have your post-graduation experiences changed or reaffirmed the career trajectory you were following?
I think for me, as a freelance theater artist, and honestly, it took me a good while to be confident enough to say, yes, that is my job, like that is my career. You know, there was a whole season fairly recently where I started applying for jobs thinking, okay, I just need to find something, you know, try to find like something with a salary or even just something that, you know, as opposed to a gig economy, which is what I work. And I realized, you know, that I didn't fully give myself a chance to fully pursue as much as I did virtual theater, you know, during the pandemic. And now theaters are starting to open up. My first in-person gig was August 2021. So that was like a big deal to me of like, oh my gosh, we're in person. We're all wearing masks, thank God. But like, you know, that was, you know, a big deal for me. So I think that, you know, I mean, obviously the pandemic was a huge, you know, kind of wave, I think, for a lot of people. But I think for me to graduate with my master's into the pandemic and say, you know what, I'm still going to do theater, even if it's virtual, you know, we're going to make it and do what we can. And yeah, very recently I've decided, okay, I'm going to fully pursue you know, my directing career. And that's when the opportunities really started to come in, when I finally said, okay, this is what I'm doing. So yeah, so I mean, it's definitely been a journey. But you know, for any artists out there, and I think even if you're not an artist, I think it's a huge thing to just say, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to, you know, no matter what happens, there's always ebbs and flows. There's always, you know, peaks and valleys. And I'm just going to be okay with that. And that was huge for me. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Melody. So I guess for me, CRF confirmed I wanted to go to graduate school. And now that I'm in graduate school, I want to at least remind you, if you don't already know this, that UCR is such a nice bubble of inclusivity with diversity and equity. And I felt respected at UCR, even as an undergrad. Like the graduate students in my department treated me as an equal. And I think at Yale, it's very different culture. And I feel like I don't thrive in it the way that I did at UCR. And so applying for CRF will give you the chance to really introduce you to academia in a way that I think many universities around the country can't do that. And so I thank UCR, and I wish it gave me enough buffer to continue on into academia as professor, but I think for now I'm unsure, and I'm sure many of you are close to graduation. It's okay to be unsure, and so for now that's where I'm at, and hopefully I'll end up back in California. I'm from Riverside, born and raised, so I think I'm going to end up back here, but for now I'm just trying to finish.
Going off of Connor and pivoting from failure and learning, I think I applied for CRF. Okay, my timeline is this. I got Goldwater, I got CRF, I got Coro, I got a few other smaller scholarships, and I was like, I'm gonna go for Marshall, Fulbright, Rhodes, all of it. And I was going in with a timeline. I'm gonna do Marshall. I already got into the master's program at Imperial that I wanted to do. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to medical school. I'm gonna become a doctor, and then I'm gonna work in venture capital advising startups. And I was absolutely heartbroken when I didn't get Marshall 2 times in a row, because I was like, they can reject me once, but they can't reject me twice. But I mean, all this to say, things happen and there's only so many things you can control. The worst thing you can do is stopping yourself from doing something because you're skeptical of yourself. Like when I was first applying, I was so worried. It's like, oh, like what if I don't get in? What if I don't get an interview? But then if you don't even apply, you're not even trying to open the door for yourself. And you don't know what's on the other side. You might get an interview, you might not get an interview. But through all of these learnings, I found an interesting route to my current, like my dream job in venture capital. And in my essays, like Gladys probably knows this, I wrote interface between business and science so many times, like it was ridiculous. And I thought that I would need to go to a graduate school, like earn my MD to enter this field, because it was so interesting to me. And I just didn't think I had the credibility as a young professional to enter it. And in a sense, post-grad experiences have changed and reaffirmed my career trajectory. Is shortened my timeline, which I guess is a good thing, but also like people change their careers. I know like my coworkers, some of them were PhD students, they graduated, now they're working with us. I know people that were, one of my coworkers was at DARPA, another one was like a COO of many startup companies, and he helped them go public. So just know, like, be comfortable with plans changing, and be open to new opportunities, because sometimes you just don't know.
Man, there's so many things that all three of my esteemed co-panelists just said. I could go off of, and I relate to a lot. I think that, you know, in the interest of me not rambling and keeping this reasonably short, I will say that I completely agree that, you know, you have to be ready and willing to accept when, you know, you get thrown a curveball or 2 or 10 by life, and when things don't go the way that, you know, you have planned and hoped that they will go, and understand that, you know, it's okay. And hopefully things like the CRF help to, you know, build that confidence and, you know, belief in yourself, but know that it's okay to fail. I think that, you know, one of the things, so I mean, to be clear, I glossed over it when I was giving my introduction because you don't like to underscore it, but I went to a PhD program and then subsequently dropped out at the end of the first year to go get a job. You know, there were friends who were finishing PhDs who I talked with when I was starting that sort of were like, you know, yeah, it seems pretty clear that it seems like you don't really want to do the PhD. And I went, you know, these are the smartest people I knew. And I was like, what do you guys know? Come on, of course I want to do this. And they were right. And so I think but it took a while for me to accept that, right? It took a while for me to accept and realize that actually, no, I don't want to do this. I want to go and, you know, do something in the real world. And I think, you know, I let the idea of doing a PhD, I let the idea of, you know, all of these things get in the way of what was right in front of me, which is that, you know, I wanted to go and take my, you know, my skills and abilities and go do something else. And so I think that, you know, to a point that Julianne made, everyone who is at some point in academia, even if that is as an undergrad, will face the choice of staying in or leaving at some point. And, you know, I think that being okay with failure and, you know, realizing when it is that you want to go and do something else, whether that is saying, I don't want to go to grad school, right? Saying a PhD is not for me. knowing that is great. If you're driven and you really want to get a PhD and you go for it and you finish and you say, yeah, now I want to go into academia, that's incredible. You know, I have some great friends who are applying for postdocs and faculty jobs. And I have other friends who are like, yeah, I did the PhD and I'm done. I'm super done. I want to go into industry. So I think knowing what's right for you and being okay with those non-linearities, with those changes, with failure, and having the confidence in yourself is really important. And I hope that, you know, I hope all of you find the path that you need to follow, whatever it is and whatever its twists and turns. And I wish everyone the best of luck.
I 100% second that, and I'm glad that you guys brought that up. I think it's so important for us to understand and realize that it's okay that plans change, and we sometimes like forget that we're so young that we don't need to have our whole life figured out. So I'm really glad that you guys brought that up. And the CRF has, like, in the half year that I've been a CRF, it's definitely like built my confidence that it's okay that plans change and it's okay that you follow something that you always wanted, you know? So thank you guys so much for sharing. Our next question is, what do you wish you would have known as an undergraduate that would have better prepared you for where you are today?
I think, firstly, what everyone is saying in this panel is amazing. So I feel like just first off, everything that Catherine and Connor and Julianne are saying. But for me, something that I learned in grad school, and I wish that I remember hearing it and I was like, I wish I knew that, was, you know, in this idea of like imposter syndrome. And it sounds kind of grim, but that never really goes away. This, you know, I say this that I learned in grad school because two of my professors, you know, who are amazing, renowned theater directors, you know, they said that there's at one point in every show that they direct that they're like, I need to quit theater. There's just like a point. And I was like, oh, you guys feel that? But you've been directing for 30 years and you're professional and you're like a head of an MFA program. What are you talking about? You know, so this kind of idea that imposter syndrome doesn't necessarily go away, but that doesn't mean that you can't handle it. And that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, kind of fight back against those thoughts that, you know, that you do belong in these spaces and that you do deserve to be there. And just by the fact of you being there proves that. So yeah, I think that's something I wish that I could have internalized earlier on. I think, you know, and I think part of the CRF was helping me realize that, of like, oh, they accepted me. I didn't think I'd get it. What? I can do this project. I get funding. I can do academia. So that was part of that path, but to really internalize that, yeah, maybe it doesn't go away, but that doesn't mean you can't do these things and be an expert and be, you know, be who you are. So yeah.
I want to add to that and expand it a little more, in that something that I wish I knew before, especially in undergrad, is the innate humanity of everyone. It sounds really stupid, but like, your professors have families, they have life going on, like your friends have life going on, and like you yourself have life going on. So just giving yourself the grace to, you know, have hard times, like have hardships, but also find time for yourself to reground yourself, regroup, do what it takes to get back on your feet in a healthy way, of course. I think is something that I wish I knew more in undergrad, just because I was pushing myself incredibly hard. I think, like, Gladys might know, like my last year, I was on a lot of ambassador programs, doing research, doing leadership for like a million things. And to an extent, I was thriving, but also the path to get there and the path afterwards, like the burnout was incredibly real. And people don't really talk. I think our current generation is better at talking about it. But, you know, your parents are people too. And like I sit across Poe Bronson, he's the managing director of our firm. He's like been on Oprah. He's written a lot. He's like a New York Times bestselling author. And we talk about this all the time. It's like in a world where people run everything, it's really important to remember that like people are people and you need to give them grace. And if you want to get things done, learning how to navigate that in a graceful way will be really beneficial. And not everyone has that skill, but I'm fortunate to have learned it later on. But if I knew that for myself in undergrad, I think I would have been in a lot happier of a place. But like you just learn from these things. And now I know, and now I'm telling you guys.
I think, yeah, burnout. What I was going to say is take advantage of all your breaks. like you don't realize how important those are until you no longer have them. I think Connor is realizing that as a real person in the real world. But I would also say learn to write short emails. Professors are very busy. And yes, they're human, but they're also human in the sense that they don't have time to read long paragraphs. And so learning that skill early, I think, helped me secure some really amazing opportunities with faculty that are very high up. And then I would also note, be okay asking for help early. And one thing I've learned throughout my teaching, I'm trying to get a teaching certificate while I'm at Yale, is office hours is a very, so I'm a pseudo first gen. My parents started college but never finished. So for me, I'm essentially a first gen student. So I didn't know what office hours were in undergrad. And so in my teaching program, one of my peers was saying we should call them student hours because they're really time for students to ask professors questions. And I think as a first gen, as someone dealing with imposter syndrome, I really didn't take advantage of that until too late. And at that point, I took the background classes I needed to. And so I really had to catch up in some of my later classes. And so ask for help early. That's my biggest suggestion.
I agree with everything that everyone else said. I think I just want to underscore that imposter syndrome is very real. It doesn't go away. But you can like understanding that what you are feeling is imposter syndrome, and that for example, for me, like I do actually know how to write code. Sometimes I forget and I have to Google 10 things to write a few lines of code, but it's okay, right? And understanding that imposter syndrome is real, and when you feel that you are experiencing imposter syndrome and you actually are qualified to do what you do, to be in your job or program or whatever it is, but just to say it's very real, it doesn't go away, but recognizing it and is the first step to dealing with it and saying like, I can do this, it's okay. Yeah.
Before we move on to the next question, I just want to emphasize for the audience members, if you guys have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to just put it in the chat box or DM it to me, and we can read them off, or you could just raise your hand. But yeah, let's move on to the next question.
All right. What advice would you give students to help them optimize their undergraduate experience?
I'll keep this short to running low on time. Take advantage of your mentor or mentors. Get as many mentors as you can. I've had some really amazing faculty mentors, and then we mentioned Gladys is super rock star, amazing. So get as many mentors as you possibly can.
Really use those office hours, as Julianne said. Like some of the greatest moments that I can remember, some of the biggest kind of big game changer moments that I had were in my professor's offices or at dinner with my mentor, or like those one-on-one moments are so important and so special when you can get them. So yeah, office hours.
Really quickly, have fun. Like +1 to the break, but enjoy yourself as an undergrad. It's like working is real, and you don't really get the time. I think Julianne said this like on a few levels, but you don't get the time to enjoy yourself like this very often, if ever, after graduating. So just like have fun. Like y'all are pretty young.
Okay, Connor, did you want to add anything or?
I think that those three are all really good pieces of advice. I don't know that I have much more to add.
No worries. Okay. And then, okay, we have a question in the chat box. So for Julianne, you mentioned that the environment at Yale was very different from UCR. How do you navigate an environment that may not be as inclusive?
So I'm fortunate that I stayed in touch with my mentors from UCR. And so for me, when I feel like I'm lacking the support that I need, I reach out to them. I am slowly learning that one person cannot change the system and learning and accepting it. I guess more accepting it is the challenge, and being able to recognize that that's not my place as a graduate student, and learning to focus on myself. It's really, I'm not one to call myself selfish, but I am learning to be selfish in your graduate program. You have to be. I'm very much a team player, grew up playing sports my whole life. So for me, I struggle still that my group members are very selfish, but it's because they're more productive when they're selfish. And that is something that as a CRF, you don't fully experience because you still have that mentor that helps you and guides you and provides that support. But in graduate school, you're really on your own, and learning to be selfish is for some people like me, it's very hard, but it's a good lesson because then you'll be more productive and more successful later on in life. I hope that answers the question.
I actually had a question for Connor really quick. So your experience is very similar to mine up until this point. I'm currently planning to go into grad school next year for physics. Looking back at your undergrad, are there any like signs that you could tell that the PhD really wasn't what you wanted to go for, or any specifics that you think persuaded you to stop that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't think that there were any signs or anything like that during my undergrad. It was really my master's year that a range of things, both specifically in like my subfield of research, and then also that was the year of the 2016 election. So there was a lot of things happening in the world, in my life. I was living in another country, and like it's a very transformative time, right? Like it's easy to have those factors come together and sort of change the way that you view the world. So for me, it was, and I mean, in some ways, because of the things that I already talked about, that, you know, the value the CRF brought for me, you know, getting exposure to new fields and new areas of interest. I actually sort of sat down and did some like expected value calculations of like, is it even worth it for me to get a PhD, right? Like I had, you know, and this is sort of why I mentioned that, you know, friends of mine had said like, you don't really want to get a PhD, right? I already had it was those points when I was like, is there even any value to me getting a PhD? And honestly, it came down to, don't tell Princeton this, but I actually talked to a friend. I had sort of realized before I showed up for the PhD that I maybe didn't want to do it. I'd come to that realization, but I asked a friend who was in the program a few years ahead of me and said, like, if I don't show up, will they give my funding to another student? Like, will someone else get to go if at this point I don't? And he went, no, the department will just eat the money and it'll go, you know, it'll just go somewhere else. No one will get a spot. So I said, okay, you know what? I'll take a year of soul searching and see if it really is for me. So I think there were nothing in my undergrad that did it, but, you know, when I would say this applies specifically to my experience, and I think more generally to anyone else, when, you know, life, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, hands you, you know, a sequence of signs, that sort of, suggest a different path in your life, consider taking it. And I think that's what that was for me. It was a sequence of events that sort of went, well, all right, this seems like the obvious path now.
Can I piggyback off of this really quickly? As someone who's contemplated leaving grad program many times as well, I think in undergrad, you work so hard to get to the next step, and you're constantly working towards that you don't pause to think and really contemplate, what do I enjoy about what I'm doing? What do I find exciting? What keeps me getting up every morning and going to school every day? What is it that really provides that passion? Because there are many ways to pursue the same passion. And if graduate school is something that you want to do, that's awesome. Talk to people who are already in graduate school, especially ones that are probably in their third year or later. I think before the pandemic, 50% of graduate students suffer from depression, and the pandemic made it almost 100%, I would say, at least in my program. And so really, I struggled to get up every morning during the pandemic because I felt like my research didn't have a purpose. And I think if you can say that your research has a purpose when you start, then that will help you get through, God forbid, another pandemic. But if anything happens, whether it's a death in the family or whatnot, things are thrown your way a lot. But if you find passion in what you're doing in your research, then you can get through everything. And undergrad, I found so much passion in that, and it was easy. I went through a lot of family issues and managed to still get straight A's. So it really showed me in graduate school how much that what I'm doing is not necessarily my passion. And so try to find that now while you're an undergrad when you can make the mistakes.
Thank you guys so much.
And if none of the audience members have any more questions, I think, Gladys, I don't know if we want to stop there or finish the last question.
Why don't we ask one of the guests if they would like to answer that question? You want to go back to it?
Yeah, that's what okay. I'm sorry. So the question was, what was your most memorable experience as a CRF?
We did a ropes course our year. And I mean, no, there were a lot of great memorable experience. I feel like, yeah, the group kind of like the ropes course, we did like dinner with the chancellor, like those moments when, and I know it's really hard when you're completely virtual, but like those moments where you can kind of just hang out and be a cohort together, and kind of get to know people as people versus when it's just research. Not that it is just, we're all human and we're all a big mix of things. So getting to see all sides of people, I think that was a great experience. But the ropes course, yeah, that's like the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I would say getting to know the chancellor. So I knew him a little bit beforehand, but I think getting to know him and him actually knowing my name, I don't know if he still remembers it, but that really helped with the imposter syndrome, because it's like, oh, I must be where I'm supposed to be if he knows my name. And so that really helped. And obviously the friends, I said that at the beginning and I'll say it again. And Gladys. Gladys, always Gladys. And Jennifer, which I think she's on here. She helped with so many applications, and she's amazing too.
Yeah, I think that Jennifer was having Wi-Fi issues, but I like Jennifer was also amazing. And I think I brought every single piece of writing that I sent to anyone my senior year of undergrad. I think she at least signed off on, even if it was just skimming it. So thank you to her. No, I think that the meeting the chancellor, getting to know the chancellor, and I know I feel bad saying this because I know that this cohort and the previous one has been virtual, but the meetings in person, I think I did the ropes course like 3 times in my time at UCR, and it's incredible. I remember doing it. It's great. I would do it in a heartbeat right now if you told me I had to drive to Riverside to do it. Like, that's so much fun. That ropes course is great. I hope it's still there. And getting to getting to know your cohort and your advisor, your peers, advisors, at like like having dinner at the chancellor's is like so cool, right? I mean, like getting to hang out. I think I one time got to sit by Kate Sweeney, who I think is in psychology, and I still remember sitting and like picking her brain about whatever it was that she was interested in talking to me about, and I was like, that was just so cool, right? The experiences like that are awesome.
I think the quality time with a lot of advisors and Gladys and Jennifer. Also, our year we interviewed, I think it's Dr. Schrock, who's a Nobel laureate. That was a pretty cool opportunity. I think I helped moderate that with some other CRF, but yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I think I speak on behalf of everyone on this call when I say this was so helpful and just you guys had such valuable insight to share with us. So thank you once again, and I'll pass it on to Gladys.
Again, guys, you guys are absolutely wonderful, and we're so happy that you gain so much from the CRF, and we gain so much because with each cohort, we learn about how to further develop it. And, as I mentioned, now with the CRF, we're having interviews for the award. This year, we're actually having students do elevator pitches, video elevator pitches, because I know that in certain awards or other jobs, that's something that's happening. So all of these things are to build your skill sets, make you comfortable in these environments so that you're better prepared. And the fellows here are representative of many of our fellows who have gone on to do many amazing things. And again, they've said it, when you're in your early 20s, you think you have to have a plan. And life has curves. And you should be comfortable in taking those curves and reassessing what you want to do, because ultimately you want to be in a place where you're going to be happy. Our jobs are 40 to 60 hours a week, sometimes even more. You want to be passionate about those hours that you're devoting to your job. So finding that place where you're going to be passionate is really important. And I'm glad you guys brought that up. So it's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for your great insight. And we look forward to staying in touch. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone. Definitely apply.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.